With that, I'll turn it over to Steve Becker.
Great. Thanks very much, Amy. And welcome, everyone. I appreciate you guys spending a little time with us today and to learn a little bit about a topic that we consider to be very important here at AVAP. With you today is me. I am the GM for healthcare IT within AVAP, and Jason Anderson, who's a practice director also in the business with me in our practice. And our focus has been primarily throughout our careers has been healthcare. As a matter of fact, I've spent 25 years. Jason spent over 10 years in healthcare, helping clients from everything from advisory services to implementation of technology, whether that's EHR, ERP, or frankly anything in between, and then helping clients, post go live, optimize their systems and make sure that they're getting the most value out of the dollars that they've spent on technology. Today, what we're going to talk about is a thesis, and that is how integrating beyond interfaces, how integrating your EHR and your ERP can truly lead to improve patient outcomes, enhance physician satisfaction and clinician satisfaction, increase revenue, and cost reductions. Before I, kind of get into the heart of our presentation, though, I thought I'd give you a little bit of an overview of who AVAP is. I know many of you know us, have known us for a long number of years. We've been in business since 2006, but we've actually grown quite a bit over that time. As a matter of fact, for those long-term customers that have known us since 2006, we can continue to experience tremendous growth. We have over 300 clients. Of those 300, over 200 of them are healthcare clients. We have 600 employees. We call our employees citizens. And the most interesting thing about that for I think most of you on this call is that we have the largest and most experienced pool of Cloud Suite certified consultants in the entire industry. We've won numerous awards, over 100 industry awards in our history. However, we're very, very proud of our partnerships, and specifically in this case, our partnership with Infor and the fact that we've been 5 times we've been Partner of the Year. Most recently, we became certified as the only partner of ProSci. We are certified to the level where we can actually take people and have them certified in change management. If you're not familiar with who ProSci is, they're the industry leader in organizational change management strategy. We see that as being very critical to all the things that we do across implementations, across optimizations, and helping clients in their cloud implementation specifically and in adoption to the cloud. So that's a little bit about who we are. How about a little bit, I can give you a little bit more detail about what it is that we do. We offer advisory services, and this is really kind of the foundation of who we've become over the years. Everything from vendor selection to organizational readiness, helping people as they plan for their future with their technologies, business analysis and process design, really helping design what the future is going to look like, program governance through an implementation, making sure that they really understand exactly how you're doing things, how you should roll things out effectively, through change management, and then of course at the end, analytics and business intelligence to make sure that you're getting that value out of the system, but also you're coming back and measuring what it is that from where you started to where you are today and how you can improve. Of course, most of you know we've been in implementation since we were founded 15 years ago. Everything from project directorship, project management overall, prescriptive guidance, project acceleration, really helping people get to their value quicker. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, we've got very deep industry knowledge. On the tail end of that, we also offer managed services, helping our clients post go live, really making sure that they can sustain the investment they've made in the technology. So we offer everything in that space from on-demand services and staff augmentation, help desk support, monitoring and management as well. I think it's key that, as you're hearing us talk today, not to make too much of this be, an infomercial, but it's important, I think, for you guys to know who it is that you're hearing from and what our expertise is in the marketplace and why we're having this conversation with you today. So whether you're upfront considering your planning, you're doing an implementation, you're midstream of implementation, or all the way afterwards. Our goal, the single goal that we have as a company, is to be your partner through that. So let's talk a little bit about what makes us a little bit unique in the marketplace. First and foremost, I think you guys have known us as being an operator and helping people implement specifically Infor solutions over the course of our history. However, back in 2016, we acquired a company called Falcon. And Falcon was very big in the EHR space, helping clients with implementations with Epic and with Cerner and with some of the other major EHR solutions in the marketplace. And then last year, we acquired a company called Navigator. And Navigator has been in business almost as long as AVAP has, about almost close to 15 years, about 12 years. And Navigator was very much an advisory services firm, bringing business intelligence and organizational change management to the picture, which allows us to, if you look at us across the board, to really be a holistic company for healthcare IT. You know, we look at the two largest investments that most health systems, provider health systems, make are electronic health record and ERP. And our goal is to try to help our clients maximize the value of what they receive from those two systems. And so that's what we're here to talk about today, specifically. You know, in recent years, you know, providers have spent a lot of focus and energy and obviously technology budget on the electronic health record. Unfortunately, this has led to, you know, a neglect in the back office systems, as we've been very focused on meaningful use and accountable care and population health with the EHR. But now, today, what we're seeing, and according to KLAS, is a significant amount of organizations that are focusing on their ERP systems, considering moving them to the cloud and cloud-based solutions. As a matter of fact, according to KLAS research, 69% of all health systems are actively evaluating their ERPs today. But we want to be careful. We want to make sure that we do get the most value out of these two systems. And in order to do so, we got to look at the connectivity beyond, like I said earlier, just simple interfaces. We really need to be looking at integration between the systems and be able to knock out the barriers between the two. You know, I think historically, these two systems haven't really considered one another when they've gone through implementations. Whether you're, you know, at the forefront of an electronic health record implementation or an ERP implementation, you know, typically the other systems are an afterthought or a simple interface discussion. We want to change that to have us think proactively of how you can connect these systems more tightly integrate them to really be able to see the value that you've spent on the technologies. So let's kind of talk about some of the points where this integration exists, where these integrations exist. First and foremost, of course, you know, upfront and scheduling and admission. You know, most scheduling is done in your EHR, and having access to all the important features and functionalities in the ERP is going to be very important. Understanding exactly, you know, all the things that are important for scheduling cases and all the different things that you do around scheduling will be very important in having that information in. Same thing for supply chain. Jason's going to spend a little time talking, or a lot of time today, talking about supply chain management. So I'll let him kind of cover that. But certainly, I think you guys can see that that's a very important and key component between these two systems. Financial management. Hey, making sure that we capture the right revenue and that we maximize what we're doing there. And then, of course, finally, coming back and measuring what we've done and looking for opportunities for improvement. Having a tight integration between these two systems truly enables this. So let's talk a little bit about the value of that, where we see value and where we see potential. First and foremost, patient safety. Without question, having a tight integration between these systems can absolutely have a positive impact to patient safety. From something as simple as tracking implants, making sure that you know exactly what patients have what implants implanted in them from surgeries in the past, in case there's a recall, et cetera, that you can go back and revisit with those patients, bring them back in, you know exactly who that is, or any efficacy things that you see as an organization to be able to change behaviors over time. Satisfaction. I think we've all experienced the cases, canceled cases when, the supplies weren't ready at the time of a surgical procedure. That leads to not only physician satisfaction issues, but patient satisfaction issues, which is of course becoming paramountly important to the healthcare organizations, but also everybody involved. It's a huge satisfier to be able to make sure that you've got the right materials in the right place at the time. And that really increases satisfaction across the board. Of course, revenue, avoiding leakage, increased supply and implant revenue in both perioperative and acute care settings is key for us going forward. Maximizing that, making sure that we've got full transparency of what works best in the organization, or have huge impacts to revenue improvements. And finally, cost containment. Again, this is, I think, very important as we look at this integration and being able to streamline our inventory, really looking across the organization to be able to reduce the waste and actually improve efficiencies. Jason's going to go into some examples of some of this that I think that you'll see that really shine a light on this. But the interesting thing is that this is some stuff that I think is kind of low-hanging fruit that nobody's really taken advantage of. And despite the fact that you can see clearly there's some great value in doing this, I'll show you some statistics that'll show you that nobody's really focused on it, or not very few have focused deeply on this. Recent surveys, 75% of doctors, nurses, service line leaders have say that a seamless supply chain operation is critically important to quality care and patient satisfaction. Yet 24% report using a recalled or an expired product on a patient. 57% say they didn't have a product or that they needed during a procedure. And 18% reported that there was a patient harmed by not having the right supplies at the right time. I mean, these are some eye-opening statistics. Hospital supply chain expenses make up 15% of all total expenses. Supply chain costs exceed labor costs, and hospital waste is more than $5 billion annually. You guys can see here that there's big problems in healthcare that I think we can solve by tightening up this problem. So how did we get here? Why don't I turn it over to Jason and let Jason kind of walk through some examples of how we got to the point that we are at and some ideas of how we can fix it.
Yeah, thank you, Steve, and good afternoon to everybody. Steve, just real quick, just make sure you can hear me. Just a quick mic check.
Yeah, I hear you just fine.
Perfect. All right. Well, yeah, so what I'm going to get into is a little more supply chain specific and kind of the what you can do as an organization to tackle the challenge of integration and set up integration to be successful. As Steve said, I'm going to first start with kind of how did we get here? So, what led us to exploring this hypothesis more, and what challenges have we seen from our clients on new implementations or going in to help optimize when looking at the connection between EHR and ERP. So the first thing is really getting back to that discussion around working in silos. So kind of that lack of involvement, really, if you think of a new implementation, I come from the EHR space, working with Epic primarily, going into a new perioperative implementation where integration with the material system is key. We find ourselves kind of dragging the supply chain team along or not bringing them in until kind of the design phase is over and we're getting into configuration and testing. And at that point, they're wondering what's going on, how did the project get here? And different requirements are being put on them because there's new data storage issues that we're asking them to hold to help feed the EHR or testing activities or item master cleanup and things like that. That can really slow things down and force you to just kind of replace bad existing workflows. And then kind of from an optimization standpoint, the question is always, who is owning this? And it seems to really be driven by whoever's leading the project, whether it's an EHR side and it's more clinically focused, so more that CIO or CMO role, or if it's ERP driven and it's the CFO. So really kind of that, misunderstanding of who's in charge and what's doing it has led to challenges in kind of making the most out of the integration. One of the other challenges that leads to that is, up front, it's often considered, as Steve said, just kind of a technical integration. So it's often a line item on a planning checklist from an interface standpoint. Send the item master from material system to EHR and send a decrementation. But really beyond that, on both sides, there's process and people implications to how you maintain that data, what the downstream and upstream impacts are from a clinical documentation or billing standpoint, or from an inventory utilization and tracking standpoint, that aren't often considered during that, which again, just leads you to not fully utilizing these two systems to their full capability. Kind of due to that, there's that lack of focus then on data and analytics, which is really kind of the key thing to unlock from these two systems, is pulling that transactional patient data from the EHR and merging it with your ERP, which has that cost information, and really using that to make some strategic insights for the business. So, these are some of the key things that, a lot of it's driven, again, from more of that technical focus and working in those silos that, we work with our clients to help break down at the beginning of those processes. So a few areas that we think are critical in kind of guiding principles for being successful with this type of integration. First and foremost, what we're talking about is maintaining an integrated governance structure and holding accountability. So pulling together stakeholders from supply chain, from the OR, from the invasive areas, from the inpatient units if necessary, from revenue cycle, from the IT world, and having them meet frequently and understand what those end-to-end workflows are and what the implications to their decisions are. So working cross-functionally then to look at those workflows, not only look at them to fix them, but continuously improve them and establish KPIs and metrics for implementing those ongoing improvements. And also using that group to develop standardized policies for data governance and maintenance. So, establishing a clear naming convention in the ERP material system so that from a clinician standpoint, when they go to look something up, there's consistency in how that looks and how they search for things. Or from a charging standpoint, ensuring there's a clear charging policy in place for what should be chargeable versus not. Just an example there, when we say a governance structure, again, it's really looking across those functional groups and forcing them to get together and looking at the different competencies and things that they bring to the table, and seeing how they fit into that overall puzzle. And again, what those implications are, their work to the upstream and downstream users. Also important, really with any project, but especially this, is to leverage the technology to its fullest capability. So we want the technology to be an enabler to these systems, and with upgrades to the cloud, just constant upgrades to system functionality. And there's a lot of changes and new things happening, and that gets back to kind of that continuous improvement idea. But really wanting to make sure we're leveraging these two systems to their full capability. Ultimately, to help drive a lot of that analytical process to drive decision support from a clinical standpoint and from a cost saving standpoint. One good example of this, I think, will be familiar to those who use Infor on the phone. The clinical bridge with Infor is a great kind of enabler, accelerator tool for establishing that more automated exchange of data between these two systems, both an accelerator from an implementation standpoint in developing this and keeping things standardized, but also from an ongoing standpoint, and making sure that data flow is continuous and real time. So in establishing an EHR and ERP integration program, we kind of have two customers that we work with. So really new implementation is one, new implementation being a brand new vendor implementation, or an upgrade to the cloud with the complexity that goes with that and kind of broader changes from prior versions, or M&A activity where kind of rolling out to new sites or merging systems and things like that. But from a new implementation standpoint, a couple tactical things we think are important are, again, going back, ensuring to align all those stakeholders early on in implementation so that they're aware of what the impacts of this are going to be, but also working with them to create a baseline current state to measure against. That's going to help you define that strategic roadmap, where those value drivers are, and incorporate that into your implementation plan so that you're optimizing while implementing, which is a mantra we love to expound is, don't just replace the current state in the bad workflows, but look to optimize with the new systems, not only the new system that you have and the capabilities that brings, but also the downstream. So, if you're upgrading to the cloud and the ERP, take that time to look at, your clinical documentation workflows and your billing workflows to ensure you're leveraging that system the most, or you weren't making sacrifices because there was limited capability with your previous system. And lastly, as with any project, incorporating change management, I think is especially important with this, kind of given what we've talked about in breaking down the silos and having these different areas work together who may not traditionally be interacting very often. The second bucket that we would usually see are clients who are live on both systems and would look to optimize this process. So, have the connections in place, but maybe again aren't leveraging technology to the fullest, or there's just process breakdowns that are causing challenges from either an inventory side or from a clinical or a billing side. For this, we kind of think through a standard assessment process to get things started, looking to evaluate the current state, identify where those challenges are, gaps in best practice, focusing on implementing some quick wins to get the project, the program started, and really working to prioritize those opportunities and develop that program against everything else that's going on, and try to continue that same culture, establish that ongoing governance and that culture of continuous improvement. So one of the ways, AVAP really looks to help across both of these, and kind of the one common thread is in creating that initial baseline and current state assessment. And one of the areas I want to dive into next is a new sort of accelerator tool that we're adopting with our clients in partnership with HIMSS Analytics, which is a new maturity model that helps provide that industry benchmark and drive that strategic planning for where you want to be with this type of integration. Just real quick overview of HIMSS Analytics. For those who don't know, HIMSS Analytics is a specific portion of HIMSS overall, but they're a nonprofit global voice in the healthcare, IT, and technology space. Really, HIMSS Analytics is known for developing different global standards and maturity models. MRAM probably being the most familiar to people, the EHR adoption model. You look at hospitals touting stage 7 HIMSS, that's the MRAM model. They do other things though, such as analytics, infrastructure, diagnostic tools, and then their newest one, the clinically integrated supply outcomes model, the CSOM model, is what piqued our interest in working to partner with them. It's a model that came out just this last fall, actually, and really looked to validate a lot of the things that Steve walked through in our history and working with clients and talking with clients and just the challenges we saw in this area. And again, we felt it provided a strong validation to a lot of what we had talked about and a good framework that looks across, all clients and establishes a benchmark to work against. So just a little more information about CSOM itself. So again, clinically integrated supply outcomes model. It's an evidence-based model. It's really outcomes focused. So looking at tracking products to individual patients to focus on quality, safety, and value. It's a global model. So what that means is it's incorporated supply chain practices, not just from the US, but globally. One of the things we've actually worked with them on is trying to beef up some of the specific considerations from US healthcare standpoint that aren't necessarily as big considerations globally, such as revenue and cost containment. But the model is meant to be prescriptive, so it helps guide you at each stage. It's a 8-stage model, as all of theirs are. So it's meant to be prescriptive and trying to classify you where you are on that, and then how to move up to get to those higher stages. It's also aspirational, so it's really focused on outcomes and ultimately kind of that patient-centric, personalized medicine idea. And I would say, the highest level really is aspirational, in that there's really not a lot of health systems leveraging the full scope of technology that would even be required to meet that level. So I think it's a great driver for the industry to kind of roll their sleeves up and push towards moving to. As they go through the evaluation, though, it's focused on kind of 4 key areas, and all these kind of tie into the things that we've been talking about. So process automation, really looking at the automation of data capture, those care processes, the data flow, ensuring they have the right information at the right time from a clinical standpoint, and then being able to automatically track that information over time of products and to patients. Clinical integration. So ensuring there's integration of supply chain into the clinical side of the world and clinical programs, ensuring that value analysis process is in place, that there's automatic capture such as barcoding or RFID at the point of care. Also, working to save decision support up front from a clinical standpoint. So, if a physician is about to use an expired product or a recalled product, they get a notification. So it's looking for, how does your organization stack up from a clinical integration standpoint. Predictive data analytics. So really looking at how your organization uses analytics to forecast purchasing, productivity, try to identify value, again, use decision support at the point of care to really help be more prescriptive and drive that rather than being retroactive and looking back at what happened, trying to be more upfront and help drive what should happen to a patient standpoint. And then lastly, looking at how you, as an organization, view the supply chain infrastructure. Do you view it as a strategic asset for the organization? And are people up to the C-suite, concerned with this model and having the tools in place for them to review analysis and make strategic decisions about the supply chain based on data from both the ERP and the EHR. So again, a lot of information there kind of packed into this one slide about what this model is. We did provide the link there at the bottom just to find some more information about it if you're interested. And kind of a little more tactically, the way we help do this current state benchmarking with HIMSS Analytics is, our role as a partner is work with our clients to educate them on the model, the value of it, working with the different leaders from a CFO standpoint on why this is important to look at from a cost perspective, CMO from a patient outcomes standpoint, and tracking of products, CIO standpoint from building up their analytics capabilities. So really reviewing again, on the right there is sort of that 8-stage model and the different points of maturity as you go up and what the expectations are. But our goal would be to review that process with them and then help them facilitate and complete the actual survey that goes into establishing where an organization falls upon this stage model here. So working across different functional areas, helping track down answers, really developing, there's probably 20 to 30 questions that correlate to these different stages and across those different categories that we help to get answers to with the client. Goes back to HIMSS, it's a baseline score, and they develop a nice gap assessment, which really ultimately, leads into a strategic road mapping session that we have with our clients. And it's a tool as a part of a broader set of tools from our other current state analysis that we're doing, our technology expertise. This fits into, helping develop that roadmap on where they are today and where aspirationally they want to try to go or at the end of an optimization. And, not even, again, necessarily working all the way to stage 7, but even incrementally on how they can kind of work through each of these specific areas. So again, it's a powerful tool in helping us work with clients in getting that current state and looking out to where we think they should be. And then here is kind of, just to wrap up that piece of it, the simplified version of what that future state looks like. So, when we talk about integration, it's really pulling together that integrated data set of supply chain and patient data and working towards enabling more proactive risk management, personalization to a patient, and helping that drive clinical decision support, patient outcomes tracking, patient engagement on the clinical side, and then supply chain procurement practices, inventory practices, and value analysis and efficacy needs from a supply chain standpoint. So merging that together kind of gives you the nice picture of where that aspirational state is, and then having your executives and your governance groups looking at that data and making real-time decisions on how to improve it on both fronts. So I give you a few different strategies and some tools out there to help kind of evaluate where the industry is at compared to where the organization may be. So does it work? Is it actually, does everything we're saying hold water? So I wanted to go through a case study here, and I will just say, after going through some of the CSOM pieces, this was prior to that. But again, it's all based on some of the same principles of developing that integration and breaking down those silos and working to have that automated process between both systems. So we worked with a large academic medical center in the Midwest. Really, the genesis of this was implementing Epic from a revenue cycle space, but as a part of that was ensuring that clinical documentation was happening in Epic and that billing was happening through Epic. And all that was set up in the current state was sending materials from the ERP system to Epic in order to support preference card development. Everything else was documented manually on paper. Those paper sheets were sent to the billing department, keyed in manually, manual markups using calculators, everything like that. So really not standard policy or procedure in place, decisions being made by individual people versus a specific set of policies or procedures. So what we did, we needed to beef up that integration from a technical standpoint to send the full item master, ensure it had a clean item master to include some of those specific items that are necessary for documentation and billing. Make that more real time with the standard HL7 interface. Worked cross-functionally with those different groups to build up better processes from an item add process to overall billing and utilization. And then implemented better clinical documentation tools, so along with documenting in the EHR, doing so with barcoding capabilities and RFID capabilities. What was the result of it? In this case, it was quite massive given where they were current state. And some of this can range depending on what level of change you're going through. But we saw an increase in 15 million additional supply charges over the first 6 months after the Epic go live. And again, a lot of that was driven just based on how they were making the determination of what to charge. It was really more on an individual biller standpoint versus kind of a standard setting a charge flag and having consistency in what that markup was. A big reduction also from that automation and time it took to post those logs and get the revenue posted in charges out the door because it was really more of a review process, review by exception versus having to key in everything. And then we saw a lot quicker end-to-end time saved from an item being requested, being needed, and to subsequently being available in the EHR for documentation purposes. So all in all, I think a strong case for the value of making sure these two systems are tightly connected, and tools like CSOM, I think, really will just help organizations on the front end make that roadmap and understand where you can go from start to end along that journey. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Steve to close us out, and then go through any questions people have.
Thanks, Jason. Great job. I know it. I don't know if everybody knows how difficult it is to talk to your computer for 20, 25 minutes straight. It's not an easy thing to do. So good job in walking through that. And I think that business case that you just walked us through, really highlights some great advantages to doing this. There's absolutely, a return on an investment for this, but there's also some other really great aspirational things that you can do by tightening this integration. And we'll talk about that in a quick second. So how do you get started? Really and truly, I would encourage, everybody on the call, if you haven't already, to go out and take a look at the Seesaw model. Go to HIMSS Analytics and take a look at what's involved there. You can quickly evaluate yourself as a result of taking a look at what they consider to be at that top level, that level 7. I know that there's technically eight levels, starts at 0. So the folks that are aspirationally trying to get to level 7, you can see what's there, but also all the things that are underneath it, and give you some ideas of how you really can evaluate yourself against that. Second thing is get involved, get engaged with this. This is end to end. One of the biggest challenges, I think, when you look at this optimization opportunity, is it's difficult in an organization to find a single owner for this, right? It's not in IT. IT's responsible, or not necessarily in IT. IT's responsible for the implementation and optimization and ongoing management and maintenance of systems, but they're not the operational owners. Operationally on the supply chain side, well, most supply chain folks are up front worrying about, contract negotiations and working with GPOs and working with, ensuring that they're have the right standardization across the organization. And so, and then of course, qualities and should, has a big component in this too. So your chief quality officer, and of course, chief medical officer, et cetera, with physician satisfaction. It's really comes across the board for all operational users. So finance, supply chain, HR, and IT. But you've got to find an owner for this and take this and run with it. It really requires some leadership to do so. And then, of course, aligning the organization, bringing your teams together for this, and establishing that right governance model that makes sense for you and your organization to go forward with this, to make sure that you've got the right representation from all folks and all parts of that organization, because, like I said before, it touches everybody. With that said, some key things that we hope that if you remember from this presentation today. First and foremost, patient safety is key. And while there haven't been a lot of studies out yet on this, this is a very this is, right front and center for the HIMSS Analytics Seesaw model. Truly looking at how we can increase our patient safety as a result of tracking implants, looking at improved patient outcomes based on, the types of procedures, the types of devices, the types of equipment, et cetera, that are used in a case. Truly has the ability to really enhance patient safety. Physician satisfaction, I would say that it's not just physician satisfaction, it's organizational satisfaction. We talked about, how, upset a physician can be if they don't have the right parts and you're ready for, a case or something. The downstream effects of that with your patients, the downstream effects with your clinicians, and pretty much everybody involved. I think it has a huge impact on their satisfaction if they're not ready to perform a procedure based on not having the right equipment or supplies at the time of procedure. And then, of course, we talked about revenue leakage and cost containment in the example that we just used. You clearly can see that there's an upside there. Having a better tracking of exactly, what supplies are needed, understanding, how you streamline inventory. All this has a huge impact on that. And so, hopefully you guys can take away these, if nothing else, these 4 things that that this can do for you as you guys go look through and do an analysis of your own place and in the process of doing this. With that said, now I'm running myself out of talking here. we thought we'd give ourselves, the last, 15, 20 minutes or so and open it up to any kind of questions or thoughts, or would like to hear a little bit more about this or a little bit more about the case study that Jason shared. So Amy or Jason, if you guys want to open up the floor for questions, please, let's do so.
Sure. Anyone can use the Q&A to send in questions. And in the meantime, I just wanted to let everyone know. Well, first, thank you for anyone who has been joining us throughout the week. And we will be meeting again tomorrow at 12 for organizational change management for any companies that are going through a large organizational change. And Friday at 12, we have a Meet the Experts panel with our presenters throughout the week. And we'd love to see you guys there as well.
Well, I echo that, Amy. Thanks for everybody for taking the time today to meet with us. If you're not comfortable asking questions on this call and you'd like to send us questions, my email address and Jason's email address is listed here. Please feel free to send us a note, and we'd be happy to get in touch with you, share any findings or anything else that you might like to hear from us, and explore anything that we might be able to help you with. I don't anticipate that anybody has raised their hand or is going to ask a question. So if Amy, I guess we can, if we don't hear for any questions, we can shut down.
Yep, I don't see anything. As Steve said, please feel free to send in your questions to either of their emails or generalinfo@avap.com. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep, thank you.